The sight of me son's body hitting the soccer field will haunt me for the rest of my life. One moment he was running, scoring goals. The next, his face contorted in pain. His desperate gasp for air turning to silence as his lips turned blue. For months I'd noticed the subtle changes in my boy, the dark circles under his eyes. The way he'd stop to catch his breath during our weekend soccer games. How he'd push food around his plate instead of devouring it like he used to. My wife dismissed my concerns as overprotective paranoia, the anxious musings of a father who couldn't bear the thought of anything happening to his only child. He's just growing, she'd insist with a dismissive wave. All boys go through phases. But as I cradled my son's limp body that terrible afternoon, her words of reassurance turned to screams of regret, and our perfect suburban life shattered into 1,000 jagged pieces. What mysterious illness had been silently consuming our son? While we argued over whether something was wrong, if this story touched your heart, please like and subscribe to our channel, and share your own experiences with parental intuition or medical emergencies in the comments below. 3 months earlier, I was watching Jamie from the sidelines of the soccer field, my travel mug of coffee cooling in my hand. Something caught my attention. While the other kids darted around like caffeinated hummingbirds, Jamie seemed to be running underwater. He'd sprint for the ball, then pull up short, hands on knees, catching his breath before rejoining the play. Did you see that? I asked Eliza, who was scrolling through emails on her phone. See what? She glanced up briefly. Jamie, he looks winded. Eliza smiled. Michael, he's been running for 40 minutes. All of the kids are tired. But they weren't. That was the thing. The other fourth graders were still bouncing with energy, while my son's face had a grayish tint beneath his summer tan. I think we should make a doctor's appointment, I said on the drive home, Jamie dozing in the back seat. Eliza sighed. He's fine. He scored a goal today. He didn't celebrate. Jamie always celebrates his goals. Because you're teaching him, too. Be humble, she countered. Isn't that what you wanted? I couldn't explain the cold feeling in my gut. As a former MT, I developed an instinct for when something was wrong. We called it the hinky feeling. That sense that the seemingly ordinary complaint was actually the precursor to something serious. The next morning, I noticed Jamie picking at his breakfast, moving cereal around the bowl instead of inhaling. Not hungry, buddy? I asked casually, not really. He shrugged. My stomach feels weird. Eliza handed him his lunchbox, probably excited about the field trip today. I touched his forehead cool and dry. Any pain? Anywhere specific? Michael? Eliza warned, her tone conveying that I was overreacting again. Just asking, I said, backing off. But I started keeping notes on my phone. Decreased appetite. 3 days. Fatigue after mental exertion. Dark circles under eyes developing. A week later, Jamie complained of a headache after school. The pediatrician diagnosed a mild sinus infection and prescribed antibiotics. I asked about the other symptoms, but Dr. Peterson waved them off. Growing pains, most likely. 10 is a transitional age growth spurts, changing sleep patterns. Nothing abnormal here. Eliza gave me a triumphant look in the car. See, he's fine. But the symptoms persisted through April and into May. Jamie, once a blur of perpetual motion, now preferred reading or playing video games to our backyard soccer matches. One Saturday, I persuaded him to kick the ball around. After 10 minutes, he stopped abruptly. Dad, my heart feels funny. I dropped to my knees beside him. Funny how? Like it's bumping extra times? He pressed a hand to his chest. That night, I approached Eliza in her bedroom. He described heart palpitations today. She was rubbing moisturizer into her hands. Kids don't get heart palpitations. Of course they do. Anyone can get them. You're projecting your medical background onto normal childhood stuff. She closed the lotion bottle with a snap. Remember when he had that rash and you were convinced it was bacterial meningitis? That was different. Was it? Because I remember racing to the ER at midnight for a mild case of eczema. I felt my jaw tighten. I rather overreact than miss. Something serious. There's a middle ground, Michael. One where our son isn't subjected to your medical paranoia every time he sneezes. The argument escalated. leaving us sleeping with a cold gap between us in the bed. The next morning, we moved around each other like polite strangers, our son oblivious to the tension as he listlessly ate a few bites of toast. 2 weeks later, at Jamie's annual checkup, I brought my list of symptoms. Dr. Peterson listened patiently, then examined Jamie thoroughly before delivering his verdict. His heart sounds normal, lungs clear. Growth and weight are tracking consistently on the charts. I understand your concern, but I'm not seeing red flags here. But the fatigue, the appetite changes, common with pre-adolescent development. If it makes you feel better, we can run some basic blood work. But I think your boy is just growing up. The blood work came back normal. Eliza framed it as definitive proof that my concerns were unfounded. I felt simultaneously relieved and uneasy. Before my corporate job at Meridian Healthcare, I spent 6 years as an EMT. It wasn't the career my business degree parents expected. But after my brother's death from an undiagnosed heart condition, I needed to understand how the human body could harbor such deadly secrets. I became known for my hunches, like the elderly man complaining of indigestion who I insisted retreat for a heart attack, saving his life, or the teenage girl with a headache who I recognized was having a stroke from her birth control medication. My partner called it my super sense. I called it paying attention. When I met Eliza, I was burning out. The constant trauma, the life and death decisions, the insufficient pay. She encouraged my transition to healthcare administration, where my medical knowledge translated well to policy work. We married, bought our suburban house, and had Jamie. I thought I'd left that hypervigilance behind Dot until now. Late at night. After Eliza fell asleep, I'd research pediatric diseases on my laptop. Heart conditions, autoimmune disorders, rare metabolic syndromes. I created spreadsheets matching Jamie's symptoms to possible diagnoses. Some nights, I'd stand in his doorway, watching the rise and fall of his chest, timing his breathing rate. This has to stop, Eliza said one morning, finding my browser history. You're becoming obsessed. I'm being thorough, I countered. You're being paranoid? And worse, you're starting to make Jamie anxious about his health. Yesterday, he asked me if he was dying because you keep watching him eat. That stung because there was truth to it. I'd noticed Jamie's worried glances when I studied him too intently. I'll dial it back. I promised. I did try. For 2 weeks, I forced myself to act normally, to swallow my concerns when Jamie needed to rest during a short walk to the park, to say nothing when he left dinner, half-dash, eaten dot. Then came the morning. Eliza left early for a work conference. I was making Jamie's lunch when a crash from the bathroom startled me. I found him on the tile floor, dazed and confused. What happened, buddy? I helped him sit up. I don't know, he mumbled. I was brushing my teeth and everything went all sparkly. Then I woke up here. My M training kicked in. He'd fainted. I checked his pulse rapid but steady. His skin was clammy. Let's get you to the doctor, I said, trying to keep my voice calm. No, his reaction surprised me. Mom says I'm fine. I don't want more needles. Jamie, please, Dad, I probably just stood up too fast. I hesitated, then made a decision I would later regret. Okay, but you're staying home from school today, and we're watching for any other symptoms. He recovered quickly, color returning to his cheeks. By afternoon, he was playing video games and laughing when Eliza called to check in. I didn't mention the fainting spell, telling myself I'd discuss it with her in person. But that evening, Jamie seemed back to normal. The next day, too. I began to wonder if maybe, just maybe, Eliza was right. Perhaps. I was seeing problems where none existed. My traumatic past with my brother coloring my perception of normal childhood variations. The incident faded, unmentioned. Jamie had good days where his energy seemed improved. I allowed myself to relax, to believe the worst was behind us. Then came the dinner when our world collapsed. Proving that sometimes the most dangerous thing you can do is ignore your instincts. The emergency room was a blur of controlled chaos. Jamie, unconscious on the gurney, disappeared behind double doors while a nurse directed us to a small waiting area. My M training made the scene unnervingly familiar. Only now I was the distraught family member, not the calm professional. What happened exactly? The triage nurse had asked, her fingers poised over a keyboard. I recounted the soccer field scene in clinical terms, falling back on my training. 10-year-old male, sudden collapse, possible syncope preceded by complaint of chest pain. Brief period of apnea followed by agonal breathing. CPR initiated. Approximate. Downtime of 2 minutes before spontaneous respiration resumed. The nurse looked at me. Medical background? Former MT. My voice cracked on the words. Eliza sat beside me now, her hands trembling as she filled out insurance forms. I should have listened to you, she whispered. Don't, I said. Not now. A young doctor with tired eyes approached 3 hours later. Mr. and Mrs. Harrison? I'm Dr. Winters. We've stabilized Jamie and are transferring him to the pediatric ICU. His cardiac enzymes are elevated, suggesting heart muscle damage. We're consulting with cardiology. Is he awake? Eliza asked. In and out. He's asking for you both. The pediatric ICU was quieter than the emergency department, the beeping monitors muted to a gentle chorus. Jamie looked impossibly small in the hospital bed, wires connecting him to machines that measured every aspect of his vital functions. Hey, buddy, I said, taking his hand. His eyes fluttered open. Dad, what happened? You got sick at dinner. The doctors are helping you. My chest hurts, he murmured before drifting back to sleep. A nurse checked his for. Dr. Ramirez will be in shortly. She's our pediatric cardiologist. I nodded, recognizing the specialist assignment as confirmation of my worst fears. Dr. Ramirez arrived an hour later, a compact woman with silver-streaked hair and intelligent eyes behind red-framed glasses. She introduced herself and reviewed Jamie's chart. We're running additional tests, but the echocardiogram shows some concerning abnormalities in Jamie's heart muscle, she explained. Has he ever complained of chest pain before today? Eliza looked at me, her face pale. He said his heart felt funny once. When was this? Dr. Ramirez asked. About a month ago, I answered. He described it as bumping extra times. Dr. Ramirez made notes. Any other symptoms? Fatigue? Shortness of breath? I recited the list I'd been compiling for months, each item landing like an accusation in the sterile room. Dr. Ramirez's expression grew more serious with each symptom. We'll need an MRI to confirm, but I suspect hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. It's a thickening of the heart muscle that makes it harder for the heart to pump blood. Is it treatable? Eliza's voice was barely audible. Yes, but it's serious. Oh, no more after the MRI. After Dr. Ramirez left, Eliza broke down. I held her as she sobbed against my chest, her tears soaking through my shirt. I'm so sorry, she repeated. I should have believed you. We both trusted the pediatrician, I said. Though the words felt hollow around midnight, Eliza went to the cafeteria for coffee. I sat beside Jamie, watching his chest rise and fall, counting each breath like a prayer. Your uncle had a heart condition? I whispered to my sleeping son. I couldn't save him, but I promised Jamie I will move heaven and earth to save you. I thought about my brother Dylan, gone at 19 from an arrhythmia no one knew he had. How my parents had fractured. In their grief, my father retreating into his work, my mother into her charity functions. How they'd barely noticed when I abandoned business school for EMT training. Searching for answers in emergency medicine, Eliza returned with 2 coffee cups and dark circles under her eyes. What if we lose him? She whispered, the question hanging in the antiseptic air between us. I couldn't answer. We sat in silence, the monitors beeping steadily. Marking each precious second our son remained with us, Dr. Ramirez arrived at 8:30 the next morning, a tablet in her hands and 2 younger doctors trailing behind her. Her face was professionally neutral, but I recognized the look I'd worn it myself when delivering difficult news. I confirmed my suspicion, she said. Jamie has hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, ICM. The walls of his left ventricle are abnormally thick, which makes it harder for his heart to pump blood effectively. Eliza gripped my hand. What caused this? HCM is usually genetic. It's one of the most common inherited heart conditions, affecting about 1 in 500 people. My brother's face flashed in my mind. My brother died of an arrhythmia at 19. Could it be related? Dr. Ramirez nodded. Very possibly. Was an autopsy performed? Yes, but they just said his heart stopped. This was 20 years ago. Medical. Understanding of these conditions has advanced significantly since then. We can do genetic testing on Jamie and both of you to clarify the inheritance pattern. Is he going to... Eliza couldn't finish the question. Die? Dr. Ramirez completed it gently. HCM can be managed with medication, lifestyle modifications, and monitoring. But I won't sugarcoat this. Jamie's case is severe for someone his age. The degree of muscle thickening is significant, and there's evidence of obstruction to blood flow. My emergency training translated her careful words. My son's condition was life-threatening. What's the treatment plan? I asked, falling back on practical questions to stem the tide of fear. We'll start him on beta blockers to reduce the workload on his heart. We'll also need to place an implantable cardioverter defibrillator, ICD. It's like a pacemaker that can deliver a shock if his heart goes into a dangerous rhythm. Eliza let out a small sob. I wrapped my arm around her shoulders. Will he be able to play sports again? I asked, thinking of his soccer cleats sitting by our front door. Dr. Ramirez's expression softened. Contact sports and competitive athletics will be too risky, but there are many activities he can still enjoy with proper precautions. After answering our questions, Dr. Ramirez left us to process the information. Eliza moved to Jamie's bedside, stroking his hair as he slept, sedated. For another test. I did this to him, she whispered. What? No. The doctor said it's genetic, not the condition. The delay in diagnosis. Her voice broke. All those months you were worried, and I dismissed you. Called you paranoid. If we'd caught this sooner, we don't know that it would have changed anything. I said, though a part of me wondered the same thing. You knew. Somehow you knew something was wrong. Tears streamed down her face. You tried to tell me, and Eliza, stop. We both trusted our pediatrician. And HCM can be difficult to diagnose, especially in children. The symptoms mimic so many other conditions. My reassurances sounded hollow even to my own ears. The truth was, I did feel vindicated, but it was the worst kind of validation imaginable. I would have given anything to be wrong. Jamie stirred, his eyes fluttering open. Mom? Dad? We both moved to his side, plastering on smiles that didn't reach our eyes. Hey, sport, I said. How are you feeling? Tired. What's happening? We'd agreed to be honest with him in age-appropriate terms. The doctors found out why you've been feeling so tired lately, I explained. Your heart muscle is thicker than it should be, which makes it work harder. Am I going to be okay? His small voice broke my heart. Yes, Eliza said, firmly. The doctors are going to help make your heart work better. Later that day, Dr. Ramirez returned with more news. I've consulted with my colleagues, and given the severity of Jamie's case, I'd like to bring in a specialist, Dr. Chun from Johns Hopkins. She's pioneering some treatments for pediatric HCM that might benefit Jamie. Of course, I said, whatever Jamie needs. What I didn't yet understand was that we were about to enter a world where whatever Jamie needs would test not just our finances, but the very foundations of our family. Dr. Mei Chen arrived the next afternoon, her presence commanding immediate respect. She reviewed Jamie's charts while we watched anxiously, her expression revealing nothing. Dr. Ramirez was right to call me, she finally said. Jamie's case is unusual for someone his age. The obstruction pattern suggests he might benefit from a procedure we're developing at Johns Hopkins. She described a minimally invasive technique using alcohol ablation to reduce the thickened heart muscle, combined with a specialized pacemaker designed for growing children. It's showing promising results in our clinical trial. Dr. Chun explained. Better outcomes than traditional surgical myectomy, especially in pediatric patients. Is it covered by insurance? Eliza asked the question I was afraid to voice doctor. Chun hesitated. That's the challenge. The procedure is still considered experimental. Most insurance companies won't cover it yet. What's the cost? I asked. All included, around $300,000. The number hung in the air like a physical presence. Eliza and I exchanged glances. We're both doing the same mental calculation. Our savings, the equity in our house, my 401. It wouldn't come. Close. Are there other options? Eliza asked quietly. Conventional treatment is certainly possible, Dr. Chun said carefully. But given Jamie's severe obstruction and his young age, I believe he's an ideal candidate for our approach. The conventional route carries higher risks of complications, more invasive surgery, and likely multiple procedures as he grows. After Dr. Chun left, Eliza and I stepped into the hallway to talk privately. We'll find the money, I said immediately. How? We don't have anywhere near that amount. I'll ask for a promotion. Take a second job. We could refinance the house. Even if we did all that, it wouldn't be enough. Eliza's voice was strained but practical. And we need to consider what's covered. Insurance will pay for the conventional treatment, which Dr. Chen just told us isn't as good for Jamie. She said it's possible, Michael. We have to be realistic. I felt anger rising. This is our son's life. We're not going to choose second best because it's realistic. I'm not saying that. But we need to understand all the options before making promises we can't keep. I paced the short hallway. There has to be a way. That evening, Dr. Ramirez confirmed our insurance wouldn't cover Dr. Chun's procedure. She was sympathetic but direct. The conventional approach is still good medicine, she assured us. We've had excellent outcomes with it. But I couldn't shake Dr. Chen's assessment that Jamie was an ideal candidate for the advanced procedure. The thought of denying him the best possible treatment because of money was unbearable. Later, as Eliza dozed in the recliner beside Jamie's bed, I stepped out to make a call I'd hoped never to make. The phone rang 4 times before a familiar voice answered. Harrison. My father's clipped tone hadn't changed in 20 years. Dad, it's Michael. A pause. Is something wrong? It's Jamie. He's in the hospital. My voice cracked. He has the same heart condition that killed Dylan. The silence that followed told me my father understood exactly what I was saying. And what I was asking, where are you? He finally asked. Memorial Hospital, downtown. I'll be there tomorrow morning. The call ended without goodbye. As was his way, I stood in the quiet hospital corridor, wondering if I'd just made a deal with the devil. Morning brought a flurry of activity. I called. Everyone I knew with connections, former colleagues from my days now in hospital administration, executives at Meridian Healthcare, where I worked, even college friends in finance. I was shameless, explaining Jamie's situation and asking for help finding funds. Grants, clinical trial openings, anything. Eliza set up an online fundraiser, writing a heart-wrenching description of Jamie's condition and our desperate search for treatment. She posted it across all her social networks, then called her parents, who promised to contribute what they could from their modest retirement savings by noon. We'd raised nearly $20,000, a remarkable show of support, but nowhere. Near enough. Then my father arrived. Richard Harrison had aged since I'd last seen him. His once black hair was now silver, his tall frame slightly stooped. But his eyes, those steel-gray eyes that could freeze an opponent in business negotiations, were unchanged. Michael. He nodded, then turned to Eliza. Elizabeth. It's Eliza, she corrected gently. Though he'd known her for over a decade, he acknowledged the correction with a slight tilt of his head. Where's the boy? I led him to Jamie's room. My son was awake, watching cartoons on the small hospital TV. His face lit up at the unexpected visitor. Grandpa? My father approached the bed with uncharacteristic hesitation. Hello, James. Nobody calls me that except you, Jamie said with a smile. A proper name for a proper young man. My father's voice softened in a way I rarely heard. With curiosity, as Jamie launched into an explanation of his heart condition with remarkable accuracy, showing my father the monitor readings and explaining what each meant. My father listened intently, asking occasional questions that revealed he'd done research before arriving. Later, in the hospital cafeteria, my father got straight to business. Tell me about this specialist and her procedure. I explained Dr. Chun's approach, the expected outcomes, and the prohibitive cost. I've spoken with the hospital's financial department, my father said. They offer payment plans, but they require a substantial down payment before scheduling. Of course, he'd already investigated. That was my father gathering all information before committing to anything. Dad, I wouldn't ask if there was any other way. He held up a hand. You're my son. James is my grandson. Of course, I'll pay for the procedure. Relief washed over me. Thank you. We'll work out a repayment plan. That won't be necessary, he interrupted. But there are conditions. My relief curdled. What conditions? First, I want oversight of James's medical care. All decisions regarding his treatment will involve. Dad, we're his parents. Second, he continued as if I hadn't spoken. You'll accept the position at Harrison Enterprises that's been waiting for you. Your healthcare background would be valuable to our pharmaceutical division. I stared at him. You're using Jamie's condition to force me into the family business? I'm assuring my grandson gets the best care while securing your future. The salary will be double what you make now, with comprehensive benefits that will cover any future treatments James might need. And if I refuse? My father sipped his coffee. I'll still pay for the procedure, but the offer to join the company will expire. Your choice. I knew what accepting would mean: 60-hour weeks, constant travel, my father's demanding standards. But I also knew what refusing would mean: continued financial strain. Potential bankruptcy if Jamie needed additional treatments. I need to discuss this with Eliza. Of course. My father stood. I'll have my assistant transfer the down payment. Today. The rest when treatment begins. Let me know your decision about the job by the end of the week. As he walked away, I wondered if helping my son meant sacrificing everything else I'd built. That night, while Jamie slept and Eliza went home to shower, I found myself alone in the hospital corridor, memories surfacing like wreckage after a storm. I was 17 when Dylan died. We were shooting hoops in the driveway when he suddenly grabbed his chest and collapsed. One moment laughing, the next gone. The autopsy called it sudden cardiac death due to probable arrhythmia, but provided little explanation for why a healthy 19-year-old's heart would simply stop. My father transformed overnight. The man who rarely missed a school event became a ghost in our home, burying himself in work, expanding Harrison Enterprises from regional to national. My mother retreated into charity functions and prescription medications. Neither spoke about Dylan. I tried. Dad, shouldn't we talk about what happened? There's nothing to discuss, he'd said. Dylan's gone. Talking won't bring him back. 2 months after the funeral, my father announced my future: Wharton Business School, then a position at Harrison Enterprises, following the path Dylan had begun. Instead, I deferred college and joined an EMT training program. This is how you honor your brother's memory? By throwing away your future? My father had demanded. I'm trying to understand what happened to him, I'd explained. Maybe help prevent it from happening to someone else. Childish idealism, he dismissed. You can't save everyone, Michael. The final break came when I met Eliza during my M training. She was a social work student, brilliant and compassionate. My father deemed her unsuitable for Harrison. Her family lacked connections, wealth, pedigree. You're making another mistake, he'd said when I announced our engagement. I love her, I replied simply. Love doesn't build legacies. He'd handed me an envelope, a check large enough to start a comfortable life, with a note: your inheritance. Advance payment for your absence. I'd torn it up, thought for 10 years we maintained minimal contact, obligatory holiday calls, a brief visit. When Jamie was born, my father sent generous gifts to his grandson, but remained a distant figure in our lives. Now here we were, connected again by the same tragedy that had torn us apart. Your father's still here, Eliza said, returning from her shower break. I saw him in the waiting area. He's probably making calls about the money transfer, I said. No, he's just sitting there, staring at nothing. She sat beside me. You never talk about him much. Not much to say. There's a lot to say, Michael. He's offering to save our son's life. With strings attached. What did you expect? From what little you've told me, strings are his specialty. She took my hand. But he's here. He came immediately when you called. For Jamie, not for me. Did you ever think that maybe he couldn't bear to look at you after Dylan died? That you reminded him too much of what he'd lost? I hadn't considered that. In my narrative, my father had simply become colder, more controlling after Dylan's death. I'd never viewed his behavior as grief. When Jamie collapsed, Eliza continued, I saw the fear in your eyes. The same fear must have been in your father's eyes when Dylan died. People handle that kind of terror differently. So I should just forgive 20 years of absence because he's writing a check? No. Eliza squeezed my hand. But maybe understanding him better might help you decide what to do about his offer. As if summoned by our conversation, my father appeared in the hallway. He looked smaller somehow, less intimidating than the figure who'd loomed over my childhood. The money has been transferred, he said. Dr. Chen can proceed with preparations. Thank you, I said, the words inadequate for the magnitude of his gesture. He nodded, then hesitated. I'm staying at the Marriott downtown. Call if anything changes with James. As he turned to leave, I glimpsed something in his expression, vulnerability I'd never associated with Richard Harrison. For the first time, I wondered what these past 20 years had cost him. Jamie's condition stabilized. But Dr. Chen was concerned about waiting too long for the procedure. His heart is working too hard, she explained. The sooner we intervene, the better his long-term prognosis. That evening, after Eliza went to the cafeteria with Jamie's iPad to answer work emails, I found myself sitting alone in the dim hospital room, watching my son sleep. His chest rose and fell in a rhythm that seemed precious and precarious. I made a decision. The Marriott was only a few blocks from the hospital. I found my father in the hotel bar, nursing a scotch and reviewing documents. On his tablet, Michael. He looked surprised to see me. Is James all right? No change. I wanted to talk to you about your offer. He gestured to the empty chair across from him. Sit. I did, declining the bartender's approach with a wave. I've been thinking about what you said about the job, and I can't do it. I met his gaze directly. I won't work for Harrison Enterprises. His face hardened. I see. But, I continued, I'd like to propose a compromise. I'm listening. I'll consult for your pharmaceutical division, 20 hours a week, remotely. I'll help improve your healthcare partnerships, streamline patient advocacy programs, whatever you need in that area. But I keep my current job. He studied me. Why the counteroffer? Why not simply take my money and walk away? Because you're Jamie's grandfather. And because I hesitated, then forced myself to continue. Because I think Dylan would have wanted us to find a way forward. My father flinched slightly at Dylan's name. For 20 years, we'd observed an unspoken rule never to mention him. I failed Dylan, he said suddenly, his voice low. I knew something was wrong. He'd complained about chest pain after track practice. I told him to push through it, that Harrison. Men didn't quit when things got tough. He stared into his scotch. 3 weeks later, he was dead. I sat, stunned. My father had never shared this before. When you started noticing things about James, I recognized that look. The same concern. I'd ignored with Dylan. He looked up at me. You were right to be vigilant. I was wrong to dismiss your career choice. Perhaps if I'd had your medical knowledge, Dylan might still be alive. The confession hung between us, bridging decades of silence. Dad, you couldn't have known. I should have listened. He straightened, reverting to his businessman posture. Your counteroffer is acceptable, with one modification. 15 hours weekly, not 20. James will need your attention during his recovery. Agreed. I extended my hand, and he shook it firmly. There's one more thing, he said. The procedure. Dr. Chen recommends it be done at Johns Hopkins, where her team and equipment are based. I know. We're arranging transport. I've taken the liberty of securing the hospital's medical helicopter for tomorrow morning. Dr. Chen has privileges at Hopkins. She accompanied James during transfer. I should have been annoyed at his presumption, but instead felt only relief. Thank you. My father nodded, then asked something that surprised me. Would it be appropriate for me to visit James before he leaves, to wish him well? The hesitation in his voice, the great Richard Harrison, uncertain, struck me deeply. He'd like that, I said. He's been asking about you. For a moment, I glimpsed the father I remembered from childhood before Dylan's death. Before the wall of grief and ambition he'd built around himself. Michael, he said as I stood to leave, you've done well. With your son. With your life? I should have told you that sooner. I swallowed hard. I'll see you tomorrow, Dad. Walking back to the hospital, I felt something shift, not forgiveness exactly, but perhaps the beginning of understanding. The medical helicopter waited on the hospital's rooftop helipad, its blades still as we approached in the early morning light. Jamie, strapped to a gurney, looked both terrified and excited. It's like I'm in an action movie, he whispered as the flight nurse checked his monitors. The boring kind where everyone's super safe, I assured him, squeezing his hand. Dr. Chen conferred with the pilot while Eliza and I received final instructions. Only one parent could accompany Jamie in the helicopter. We decided it would be me. Eliza and my father would drive to Baltimore together, an arrangement I'd once found. Unimaginable. Everything's ready, Dr. Chen announced. Time to go. Jamie's eyes widened as the gravity of the situation hit him. Dad, what if something goes wrong with this surgery? I knelt beside his gurney. The doctors are going to take excellent care of you. This procedure will help your heart work better. But what if it doesn't? What if I'm like Uncle Dylan? My breath caught. We'd mentioned Dylan only briefly when explaining Jamie's condition. You're not going to be like Uncle Dylan. Medicine has come a long way since then. I'm scared, he admitted, tears welling. Eliza leaned down to kiss his forehead. It's okay to be scared, sweetheart. We're a little scared too. But being brave doesn't mean not feeling afraid. It means doing what needs to be done, even when you are afraid. My father, who had been standing slightly apart, stepped forward. James. Jamie looked up. Grandpa? My father reached into his pocket and pulled out a small object, a worn silver dollar. This was your uncle's lucky coin? He carried it to every track meet, every important event. He placed it in Jamie's palm. Perhaps it will bring you luck today. Jamie's fingers closed around the coin. You knew Uncle Dylan? A flicker of pain crossed my father's face. He was my son, just like your father is my son. And you are my grandson. It was the most sentiment I heard from my father in decades. Jamie seemed to understand the significance, tucking the coin carefully under his hospital gown. I'll keep it safe, he promised. The flight nurse interrupted gently. We need to get moving. Final hugs, tearful goodbyes, and then Jamie and I were secured in the helicopter. As the rotors began to spin, I looked out the window to see my father with his arm awkwardly around Eliza's shoulders, both of them waving. During the flight, Jamie alternated between wide-eyed excitement at the view and nervous questions about the procedure. Dr. Chen answered each patiently, explaining in terms a 10-year-old could understand without talking down to him. Your heart muscle is like a door that's gotten too thick and won't open properly, she told him. We're going to reshape that door so blood can flow through easily again. Will it hurt? Jamie asked. You'll be asleep the whole time, she assured him. Afterward, you'll have some discomfort, but we have good medicine for that. I watched their interaction, grateful for Dr. Chun's straightforward approach. Jamie had always responded better to honesty than to sugar-coated explanations. As we neared Baltimore, Jamie turned to me. Dad, remember when you taught me to ride my bike without training wheels? Of course. You said the trick was to look where I wanted to go, not at what I was afraid of hitting. I nodded, surprised he remembered. I'm trying to think about getting better, not about being sick, he said. Is that the right idea? I swallowed the lump in my throat. That's exactly right, buddy. The helicopter began its descent toward Johns Hopkins, the sprawling medical campus coming into view. Jamie gripped my hand tightly as we touched down, beginning the next phase of our journey. Johns Hopkins Pediatric Cardiac Center was a world removed from our local hospital cutting-edge equipment, internationally renowned specialists, and an atmosphere that somehow balanced clinical excellence with child-friendly warmth. Colorful murals adorned the walls, and even the medical staff wore whimsical patterned scrubs. Eliza and my father arrived shortly after we were settled in Jamie's preoperative room. The four of us spent the afternoon together, while Dr. Chen and her team made final preparations for the next morning's procedure. Let me walk you through exactly what we'll be doing, Dr. Chen said, pulling up detailed images on her tablet. She spoke directly to Jamie, treating him as an important participant in his own care. First, we'll make a small incision here and thread a catheter, a tiny tube through your blood vessels to reach your heart. Jamie listened intently as she explained how they would use the catheter to deliver a precise amount of alcohol to the thickened heart muscle, causing controlled damage that would eventually shrink the tissue and improve blood flow. Then they would place the specialized pacemaker that would help regulate his heartbeat while allowing for his continued growth. The procedure will take about 5 hours, Dr. Chung concluded. After that, you'll stay in our ICU for 48 hours before moving to a regular room for about a week. What are the risks? My father asked, his businessman's instinct for due diligence evident. Dr. Chun didn't hesitate. The main risks include arrhythmias, irregular heartbeats during or after the procedure, bleeding, infection, and in rare cases, the need for emergency open heart surgery if complications arise. Jamie's eyes widened at open heart surgery. That's very uncommon, Dr. Chun assured him quickly. Less than 2% of cases. And we have an excellent surgical team standing by just in case. Later, after Jamie had fallen asleep, Dr. Chun met with us adults in a small consultation room. I want to set realistic expectations, she said. This procedure isn't a cure. Jamie will always have HEM. What we're doing is managing the most dangerous aspects of his condition to improve his quality of life and reduce his risk of sudden cardiac events. Will he need more procedures as he grows? Eliza asked. Possibly. The pacemaker we're using is designed to accommodate growth, but it may need adjustment or replacement in his teen years. And we'll need to monitor the obstruction to see if further ablation is needed. And sports? I asked, thinking of Jamie's soccer dreams. Non-competitive, moderate exercise will eventually be possible with proper monitoring. But competitive sports with intense training regimens will remain too risky. My father, who had been silent, finally spoke. What is your success rate with this procedure, Dr. Chung? In pediatric patients with obstruction patterns similar to Jamie's, we've seen significant improvement in 87% of cases, complete resolution of symptoms in about 60%. And the mortality rate, he pressed. Dr. Chun met his gaze steadily. 1% during the procedure itself. Another 3% experience serious complications that can lead to death within the first year, if not properly managed. The stark statistics hung in the air. Thank you for your honesty, my father said finally. Later, as we prepared to leave Jamie for the night, one of us would stay while the others slept at a nearby hotel. My father pulled me aside. I've arranged for the hospital's leading anesthesiologist to be present tomorrow, he said, and I've spoken with the chief of cardiology who will be observing. I should have been irritated at his intervention, but found myself grateful instead. Thank you. He nodded. Get some rest. Tomorrow will be difficult. As he walked away, I realized that while our approaches differed, our goal was the same, to protect Jamie by any means necessary. The waiting room clock seemed to move in slow motion. Jamie had been wheeled into surgery at 7:30 a.m., Dr. Chen promising. Updates every hour. The first 3 reports came like clockwork, proceeding as expected, vital signs stable, ablation beginning. Then silenced out by hour 4, when no update had arrived, I felt my heart rate accelerating. Eliza paced the small waiting area, checking her phone obsessively. Though she knew no one would call her instead of coming to the waiting room, my father sat perfectly still, his posture rigid, staring at the doorway as if his will alone could summon good news. Only his hands, rhythmically clenching and unclenching, betrayed his anxiety. Something's wrong, Eliza whispered after 20 more minutes passed. I was about to seek out information when Dr. Chen's assistant surgeon appeared, still in scrubs. We've encountered a complication, he said without preamble. During the ablation, Jamie developed a heart block, an interruption in the electrical signal. Dr. Chen is correcting it now, but it's taking longer than anticipated. Is he in danger? My father's voice was sharp. He's stable, but we need to proceed very carefully. Dr. Chen will come update you herself as soon as possible. After he left, Eliza collapsed into a chair, her face pale. I sat beside her, taking her trembling hands in mine. He's going to be okay, I said, with more confidence than I felt. Dr. Chen knows what she's doing. My father remained standing, looking suddenly older. This is my fault, he said quietly. What? Dad, no. The genetic testing, the preliminary results came back this morning. He pulled a folded paper from his pocket. I asked him to rush it. The mutation came from our side of the family. The Harrison line. I took the paper, scanning the complex genetic information. This doesn't mean it's your fault. These mutations can be sporadic. And even if it was inherited, you couldn't have known. I should have had our family tested after Dylan. His voice was bitter. If I had, we might have caught James's condition earlier. You can't think that way, Eliza said gently. We all wish we'd known sooner. The conversation halted as a hospital. Chaplain entered the waiting room, asking if we wanted company or prayer. My father declined brusquely, but Eliza accepted, finding comfort in the chaplain's quiet presence. As evening approached with still no further updates, my father and I found ourselves alone in a small courtyard outside the waiting area. The summer air was thick with humidity, fireflies beginning to appear in the gathering dusk. I have heart problems, too, my father said suddenly. Atrial fibrillation, diagnosed 3 years ago. I turned to him in surprise. He never said anything. It didn't seem relevant. He paused. The genetic report suggested it may be connected to the same mutation that affected Dylan and now James. Are you being treated? Medication? Occasional cardioversion when the rhythm gets too irregular. He looked at the hospital building. Nothing like what James is facing. Why are you telling me this now? He was silent for a moment. Because I realized something today, watching you with Elizabeth, seeing how you support each other. I've been alone with my health concerns, just as I've been alone with most things since your mother left. This was the first time he'd acknowledged my mother's departure as leaving, rather than the mutual separation they'd always claimed. She couldn't bear the house after Dylan died, he continued. Too many memories. I couldn't bear to leave it, for the same reason. Another failure on my part. Before I could respond, Dr. Chen appeared at the courtyard entrance, surgical cap in hand. We rushed toward her. Jamie is stable, she said, exhaustion evident in her voice. We successfully completed the ablation and pacemaker implantation. The heart block was challenging, but we were able to establish a good rhythm with the pacemaker. So he's okay? Eliza had joined us, hope in her eyes. He's in recovery now. The next 24 hours will be critical, but I'm cautiously optimistic. As relief washed over us, I noticed my father discreetly wiping his eyes. The first tears I'd seen from him since Dylan's funeral. Jamie looked impossibly small in the pediatric ICU bed, connected to a constellation of monitors and machines. His chest rose and fell with the assistance of a ventilator standard procedure after his type of surgery. Dr. Chen assured us likely to be removed within 24 hours. We were allowed to visit 2 at a time. Eliza and I went first, approaching his bedside with a mixture of relief and apprehension. He's heavily sedated, the ICU nurse explained. But hearing familiar voices can be comforting. I leaned close to Jamie's ear. Hey, buddy. The surgery's over, and you did great. Mom and I are right here. Eliza stroked his hair, careful to avoid the various tubes and wires. We love you so much, Jamie. Rest now and get strong. When we stepped out, my father took his turn, standing awkwardly at Jamie's bedside. Through the observation window, I watched as he tentatively placed his hand over Jamie's, then began speaking softly. I couldn't hear his words, but the tenderness in his expression was unmistakable. The next morning brought good news. Jamie's breathing tube was removed, and he regained consciousness, groggy but responsive. By afternoon, he was able to take small sips of water and answer simple questions. Does your chest hurt? Eliza asked. A little, Jamie mumbled. Feels tight. Dr. Chen, making her rounds, explained this was normal. The pacemaker needs time to settle, and your heart is adjusting to the changes we made. The discomfort should improve each day. On day 3, Jamie met Miss Powell, the physical therapist who would guide his recovery. She was a cheerful woman with bright purple glasses and boundless energy. We're going to start very small, she told Jamie. Today's goal is just sitting up in bed without getting dizzy. Jamie accomplished this, though not without effort. The pride in his eyes at this modest achievement moved me deeply. My father, who had expected to return to New York after the surgery, surprised us by extending his stay. He arrived each morning with coffee for Eliza and me, and small gifts for Jamie, books, puzzles, a handheld video game approved by the nurses. Harrison Enterprises can survive without me for a while, he said when I questioned this unprecedented absence from work. James's recovery is more important. As days passed, Jamie's strength gradually returned. He progressed from sitting up to standing beside the bed, then taking short walks down the hospital corridor. Pushing his IV pole like a scooter, Dr. Chun's team monitored his heart continuously, making minor adjustments to the pacemaker settings and medication dosages. Each positive report felt like a small victory in a battle we were finally winning. Balancing Jamie's hospital stay with work obligations proved challenging. Eliza and I took turns, one staying with Jamie while the other found quiet corners of the hospital to manage remote work. My boss at Meridian Healthcare had been extraordinarily understanding, allowing me flexible hours and extended leave. My father, true to his business instincts, established an efficient routine. He would sit with Jamie during the hours Eliza and I needed to work, his laptop open beside Jamie's bed as they both attended to their tasks, Jamie completing simple schoolwork sent by his teacher, my father managing his empire via email, video calls. I walked in one afternoon to find them engaged in an intense chess match on a magnetic travel board. My father had brought Dad's teaching me strategy, Jamie explained, studying the board with concentration. He says it's good for my brain to think ahead. Your son has a natural aptitude for seeing patterns, my father remarked, a valuable skill in any field. The casual use of your son, rather than the formal James, marked a subtle but significant shift in my father's demeanor. On day 7, Dr. Chun delivered encouraging news. Jamie could be transferred to a regular room, one step closer to going home. He's exceeding our expectations, she told us. His heart is responding well to the procedure. The obstruction has decreased significantly, and the pacemaker is functioning perfectly. For the first time since Jamie's collapse, I allowed myself to believe that we might actually emerge from this nightmare changed. Certainly, but intact. Jamie's transfer to a regular room marked a turning point. His color improved, appetite returned, and the physical therapy sessions became more ambitious. Miss Powell had him walking complete laps of the pediatric floor, timing each circuit to track his progress. 3 weeks of recovery, then we'll start cardiac rehabilitation, Dr. Chun told us during rounds. If all goes well, you could be home in 10 days. I'd just begun to exhale when everything changed. It happened during a routine physical therapy session. Jamie was walking his 3rd lap, joking with Miss Powell about racing her someday, when he suddenly stopped mid-sentence. His face drained of color. Jamie, Miss Powell touched his shoulder. My chest feels weird, he whispered. Then his eyes rolled back and he collapsed. The hospital's rapid response team materialized within seconds, surrounding Jamie's crumpled form. Eliza and I were ushered away as they worked, medical terminology flying between them. BTAC, ICD not firing. Prep the crash cart. Dr. Chen appeared, barking orders as Jamie was rushed back toward the surgical floor. A nurse guided us to a small waiting room. Jamie's experiencing ventricular tachycardia and abnormal heart rhythm, she explained. Dr. Chen is taking him back to surgery to address the issue with his pacemaker. But it was working perfectly, Eliza protested. Sometimes the heart reacts to the device. Dr. Chen will explain more when she can. My father found us there an hour later, having been notified by the hospital. His face was ashen. What happened? He demanded. I explained what little we knew. This can't be happening again, he muttered, pacing the small room. Not again. The parallels to Dylan's death hung unspoken between us. I felt my carefully constructed hope crumbling, replaced by a suffocating dread. 5 hours passed without news. Eliza dozed fitfully against my shoulder. My father continued his relentless pacing, making occasional calls that he immediately ended if the recipient couldn't provide the medical expertise he sought. Eventually, I slipped away, finding myself in the hospital's small chapel. I wasn't particularly religious, but the quiet space offered refuge from the sterile waiting room. I sat in the back row, head in my hands. The chapel door opened, and to my surprise, my father entered. He hesitated when he saw me, then deliberately took a seat beside me. I didn't know you were here, he said awkwardly. Just needed a minute, he nodded. We sat in silence, the colored light from the stained glass windows casting patterns across the floor. I never told you, he finally said, but I came to a chapel, like this when Dylan was dying. Made all kinds of promises to God if he'd just spare my son. His voice was rough. When those promises weren't kept on either side, I decided faith was for fools. I'd never heard this before. My father had always presented himself as too practical for spiritual matters. And now, I asked? Now I'm old enough to admit I don't have all the answers. He stared at the simple cross on the wall, and desperate enough to try anything that might help James. Before I could respond, my phone vibrated. A text from Eliza. Dr. Chen is looking for us. We hurried back to find Dr. Chen in surgical scrubs, her expression carefully neutral. The pacemaker defibrillator wasn't firing properly during the arrhythmia, she explained. We've replaced it with a different model and adjusted his medications. He's stable now, but this was a significant. Will he recover? My father's question was direct. The next 48 hours are critical, Dr. Chen replied. If he remains stable, yes, I believe he'll recover. But this complication means a longer hospital stay and a more careful rehabilitation process. As we absorbed this news, a nurse appeared. Dr. Chen, he's asking for his family. A small sign of hope in an otherwise devastating day. The critical 48 hours passed with agonizing slowness. Jamie remained in the ICU, heavily monitored but stable. The new pacemaker defibrillator functioned correctly, intervened once when his heart briefly slipped into an irregular rhythm. On the third day, after the setback, Dr. Chen delivered cautiously optimistic news. His heart is adapting to the new device. The arrhythmia episodes are decreasing in frequency and severity. What caused the complication? I asked. Sometimes the heart tissue around the device becomes irritated, triggering arrhythmias. The new placement and medication adjustments to be addressing the issue. By the end of the week, Jamie was well enough to return to a regular room. His energy remained low, his normally buoyant spirit dampened by the setback and intensified medication. I was supposed to be getting better, he said one evening, frustration in his voice. Now I feel worse than before. Recovery isn't always a straight line, Eliza explained, smoothing his hair. Sometimes there are detours, but you're still moving forward. Jamie considered this, like when we drive to Grandma's house and sometimes have to take the long way because of traffic. Exactly like that. As June turned to July, Jamie's recovery regained momentum. The new medication regimen balanced his heart function without excessive fatigue. Physical therapy resumed, more cautiously this time. My father, who had extended his stay indefinitely, established a foundation to support families facing similar medical crises. He spent mornings with Jamie and afternoons in meetings with hospital administrators, financial experts, and parent advocates. The Harrison Family Heart Initiative, he announced one day, showing us the newly designed logo. To help families access experimental treatments insurance won't cover. I was stunned by this uncharacteristic philanthropy. This is incredible, Dad. He shrugged, uncomfortable with praise. It's what should have happened after Dylan. One night, after Jamie had fallen asleep, my father and I found ourselves in the hospital cafeteria, sharing a pot of mediocre coffee. I've been thinking about your consulting proposal, he said. 10 hours weekly seems more appropriate given James's ongoing needs. I smiled. Negotiating down from your own counteroffer? That's new. Priorities change. He stirred his coffee. The past month has made that abundantly clear. It has, I agreed. For all of us, when I saw James collapse during therapy. He paused, collecting himself. It was Dylan all over again. Except this time there was a second chance. Because of you, I acknowledged. Without your help, we couldn't have afforded Dr. Chun's procedure. Money was the easy part. He looked directly at me. The hard part was confronting the past. Seeing how my response to Dylan's death fractured our family. Realizing I might have prevented James's suffering if I'd been more open about our family's medical history. Dad? Let me finish. I'm not good at this. He took a breath. I'm proud of you, Michael, of the father you've become, the husband, the man. You're nothing like me, and that's your greatest accomplishment. I was speechless. In 40 years, my father, I had never expressed pride in my choices. Thank you. I finally managed. That means more than you know. 10 days later, Jamie took his first steps outside the hospital. A supervised walk in the healing garden with Miss Powell and Dr. Chen. His face turned upward to the sun, eyes closed in simple pleasure. How does it feel? I asked. Like being born again, he said, with the unconscious wisdom of children. Everything looks different now. As I watched my son breathe the fresh air, my father standing protectively nearby, and Eliza capturing the moment on her phone, I understood exactly what he meant. We were all being reborn in the aftermath of near tragedy, seeing the world and each other with new clarity. After 6 weeks at Johns Hopkins, discharge day finally arrived. Dr. Chen reviewed Jamie's medication schedule and activity restrictions. With us, emphasizing the importance of the cardiac rehabilitation program, he would continue as an outpatient. Remember, no lifting anything heavier than 5 pounds for the next month. No submerging the incision sites until they're completely healed, and absolutely no rough physical activity. Jamie nodded solemnly. At 10, he developed a surprisingly mature understanding of his condition and the care it required. What about school? He asked. 5th grade starts in September. We'll evaluate in late August, Dr. Chun said. If your recovery continues, at this pace, a modified school schedule should be possible. Half days at first, with regular rest periods. The journey home felt surreal. After weeks in the hospital's self-contained world, ordinary scenes, people shopping, jogging, walking dogs seemed both strange and precious. Jamie pressed his face to the car window, absorbing everything with wide eyes. The world got more colorful, he observed Dot when we turned onto our street. Jamie gasped. A banner stretched across our front porch. Welcome home, Jamie. Neighbors stood in our yard, applauding as our car approached. Jamie's best friend, Ryan, raced alongside the car, grinning wildly. Did you know about this? I asked Eliza. She smiled. Emily organized it. Just a quick welcome. They all know Jamie needs rest. Our neighbor Emily had coordinated meals, lawn care, and mail collection during our absence. Now she'd gathered the community to celebrate Jamie's return. My father, who had driven separately, watched the scene with a mixture of approval and discomfort. Large displays of emotion remained foreign territory for him, but he was trying. Inside, we found our home transformed. The living room furniture had been rearranged to accommodate a hospital bed, temporarily installed for Jamie's first weeks. At home, the kitchen was stocked with groceries. A schedule in the refrigerator detailed when neighbors would deliver meals. Your bedroom's upstairs, so you'll use this for now, Eliza explained to Jamie. The nurses showed me how to help with everything you need. But Jamie was distracted by a familiar sound, the click of nails on hardwood. Moments later, Cooper, our golden retriever, bounded into the room, stopped abruptly at the sight of Jamie, then approached slowly, tail wagging cautiously. Cooper, Jamie's face lit up. The dog gently sniffed Jamie's hand, then placed his head on the boy's lap with a deep sigh. He slept by your bedroom door every night you were gone, Emily told him. We had to coax him out for walks. That night, after neighbors departed and Jamie settled into his temporary bed, Cooper curled protectively beside him on the floor, refusing to leave. The dog's animal instincts seemed to recognize Jamie's vulnerability. He's got his own cardiac monitor, Eliza joked softly. My father, who had helped arrange medical equipment and organize medications before departing for his hotel, called to check in. James is comfortable? He asked. Yes, settling well. I reported. Will you come for breakfast tomorrow? A pause. I should return to New York. The company. Dad, I interrupted. Jamie would love to have you here. Another pause. 9 o'clock? Perfect. Our first night home brought both relief and anxiety. Eliza and I took turns checking on Jamie, adjusting to life without the constant reassurance of hospital monitors. Every small sound from the living room brought me instantly awake. Around 3 a.m., I found Eliza sitting beside Jamie's bed, watching him sleep. I keep thinking about that night, she whispered as I joined her. When he collapsed, how close we came to losing him. But we didn't, I reminded her, taking her hand. Because of you. Because you noticed what everyone else missed. I shook my head. Because we were lucky. Because my father could afford Dr. Chun. Because medical science has advanced since Dylan's time. Jamie stirred slightly. Cooper immediately, raising his head to check on him before settling back down with a sigh. Our family feels different now, Eliza observed. Stronger somehow. I thought about my father's unexpected presence in our lives. The community rallying around us, the way crisis had clarified what mattered. It is stronger, I agreed. We are. 6 months after Jamie's collapse, winter wrapped our neighborhood in a gentle blanket of snow. The transformation of our lives had been as complete as the seasonal change. Jamie's follow-up appointment with Dr. Chun showed remarkable progress. The pacemaker defibrillator functioned perfectly. The obstruction in his heart had decreased by 60%, and his exercise tolerance improved weekly. He had returned to school in October, initially for half days, but now attending full-time with modified physical education requirements. His prognosis is excellent, Dr. Chun told us. They'll always need monitoring, but he's responding beautifully to treatment. My own transformation had been equally profound. After much reflection, I resigned from Meridian Healthcare, using my medical background and personal experience to establish the Family Patient Advocacy Coalition, a nonprofit organization helping families navigate complex medical systems and experimental treatments. You're sure about this? Eliza had asked when I first proposed the career change. It's a significant pay cut. I've never been more certain, I'd replied. And with the consulting, work for Dad's company will be financially stable. My father had surprised us by offering to be the primary investor in the coalition, with one condition: it must remain independent, even from Harrison Enterprises. No conflicts of interest. This stipulation, prioritizing ethics over control, demonstrated how much he had changed. My father now visited monthly, staying in our guest room rather than hotels. His relationship with Jamie had deepened, the two sharing a bond that sometimes excluded the rest of us private jokes. Chess strategies, Sunday morning pancake experiments that left the kitchen in disarray. One evening in December, my father and I sat on the back porch, watching Jamie and Cooper play carefully in the snow, the dog instinctively gentle with his young master. I've updated my will, my father said abruptly. Dad, that's not necessary. It is. Harrison Enterprises will go into a trust that you'll oversee until James is old enough to decide his own involvement. The Harrison Family Heart Initiative will receive significant funding in perpetuity. I was stunned. What about cousin Robert? He's been working at the company for years. Robert will maintain his position, but the controlling interest will be yours. He sipped his bourbon. I've learned the importance of keeping certain things in the immediate family. Inside, Eliza was preparing for her own new beginning after years in corporate event planning. She had accepted a position as patient experience director at Children's Hospital, inspired by our journey. Families need an advocate inside the system, she'd explained. Someone who understands both the medical realities and the emotional toll. Jamie had experienced his own rebirth. Though physically more limited than before, he had discovered new passions: chess club, robotics team, writing short stories that revealed wisdom beyond his years. His English teacher had submitted one of his pieces about his hospital stay to a national contest for young writers on Christmas Eve. We gathered in our living room, Eliza's parents, my father, Jamie, and Cooper, exchanging gifts and memories. I have an announcement, Jamie said, suddenly, standing with the deliberate care he still sometimes needed. I decided what I want to be when I grow up. A chess champion? My father suggested. A writer? Eliza guessed. Jamie shook his head. A cardiologist. Like Dr. Chen. I want to fix hearts. The simplicity and power of his declaration brought tears to my eyes. My son taking the worst experience of his young life and transforming it into purpose. Later, after everyone had gone to bed, I found my father in the kitchen, washing dishes despite our protests that he should relax.